with all of that. So I see we've got a big live screen. Okay, Linda, I think most of us know Linda Di Benedetto, so take it away, Linda.
Okay. Else, please mute yourselves, everyone else.
Yeah.
Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So today, like she said, we're going to talk about Taoism, and I'll give you a little bit of the history and a little bit of the philosophy. Like all these things, that philosophy can go on and on and on and get very deep, and we're not going to dive that deep. We'll stay on the surface a little bit, just get a general understanding. And I'll spend most of the time talking about showing you Taoism symbols in art, and I tried to find examples in different media so that you see it different ways. So Tao, the word Tao means the way or the path to enlightenment or immortality, and you'll hear immortality over and over and over in Taoism. And it grew out of ancient Chinese philosophies that involved shamanism and nature worship around the 4th century BCE. And around 500 BCE, there's a time when there were spiritual ideas being taught by many different prophets everywhere, not only in Asia, but around the world. Buddhism started in India about the same time. So that was the time when a lot of these spiritual things were being tossed around. And both Confucianism and Taoism grew popular during the Warring States. And Taoism was kind of a reaction to the rigid order of Confucianism and Buddhism. Taoism is a lot more flexible and a lot more based on a personal practice. So the principles from Taoism come from 2 texts which are used as guides for human behavior. Most times Lao Tzu is considered the founder of Taoism, although there's a little bit looseness around that. And he's credited with writing the Tao Te Ching, which is the text, it's the way and its power. And Xuanzi, who was one of his followers, also has written texts that are widely used in practice of Taoism. Now, I have to say that there's the historical identity and the circumstances around the writing of the Lao Tzu and Xuanzi texts remains uncertain. We don't even know for sure that they were historical people, but it's widely believed by followers of Taoism. So what did they look like? Well, we don't know that either, but Lao Tzu is often shown riding an ox or in an ox cart, and this image on the left is very popular as identification of Lao Tzu. And I don't know where that painting resides. I found it on the public domain. The one on the right, however, is from the Met, and they have it labeled as a Taoist immortal, probably Lao Tzu. And it's from the 10th century. And look at this figure, though. It has a top knot. Kind of reminds you a little bit of a Buddha figure, and the ear lobes are elongated. But then it had, and the right hand almost looks like a mudra feature of a Buddhist sculpture. But the long beard and the robe and the pointed shoes look more like what we see on a Confucian object. So again, you see this conflating of these spiritual philosophies in China, and it also shows up in the art. And here what we're seeing is the time when Lao Tzu has supposedly written down the Tao Te Ching. Now, again, we don't know that, but there is a legend that he was in an ox cart. Can you see my pointer?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. He's sitting in the ox cart here, and he's going out the west gate to China, into the west, where he plans to be a hermit and live out the rest of his life out there. And the guardian to the pass stops him at the gate and asks him to just rest with him, come and stay with him for a day or two. And then he's just pulling out of him all these ideas, and ideals from Taoism, and asks him to write them down, which he does. And that now is accepted as the origin of the Tao Te Ching. Now, images of Chuanzi are really much rarer than Lao Tzu. I did find the one on the top here, and he looks very much like that bronze image with that thing on his head and the beard. It seems like Taoist immortals and deities generally look similar to this kind of a portrayal in art. But I did include this little segment of a scroll that is from the Met. It's called The Pleasures of Fishes. And it comes from a passage in Chuanzi's writing where he's walking along a river and he says, see how the minnows come out and dart around wherever they please. That's what fish really enjoy. And his companion says, well, you're not a fish. How do you know what fish enjoy? And he replies, you are not I. So how do you know that I don't know what fish enjoy? And this is very much a Taoist kind of debate. And look how the fish, you really do get a sense of joy with just the way they're curving, and that one in the center with that little flick of the tail. They look very happy. So Taoist principles we'll discuss briefly. Taoism recognizes no supreme God, but what's important is cultivating simplicity, detachment, and virtue. The Tao stresses self-cultivation, flexibility. There are no hard and fast rules. And in fact, you just let things take their natural course, don't force anything. And that's called Wu Wei. The way is about accepting that everything is always in constant flux. So change is actually good. And a good leader knows how to go along with that change and use that change. And if there's a really controversial change, a good leader just finds a way to make that look normal, and then it's acceptable to everybody, instead of just imposing it very harshly. It stresses inaction. Strength lies in weakness, not force. And the example that's usually given is that water's soft and it always yields, but it eventually can wear away even very, very hard rock, to give us something like, for example, the Grand Canyon. Living in harmony with the natural world is the goal of every Taoist. And some of the things they use to achieve spiritual balance are chants, rituals, and special charms. And the ultimate goal is longevity or immortality. Are there any questions so far?
I have a question. So what do they think happens when you die? Do they ever say anything about that?
Yes, and I'll talk about that when I talk about the immortals.
Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions? Oh, I forgot to, part of the principles that you might hear about also, sometimes they call these the three precious jewels: compassion, moderation, and humility, which, they recognize that each one of us can't practice these perfectly, but that the Taoists should strive to practice them every day as much as they can. And then through history, Taoism became sort of a semi-official religion during the Tang Dynasty. And during the Tang Dynasty, the emperors revered Lao Tzu, and they built many temples and schools, Taoist schools. But Taoism did compete with Confucianism, which was much more widespread. And then in the Song Dynasty, Taoism reached its height of popularity under Emperor Hui Song. At one point in his reign, he even banned Buddhism. So he was really pushing Taoism, although these religious philosophies coexisted most of the time in Chinese history without any problem. And then after the communist takeover, all religions were banned, including Taoism. So, here's a point. You see, I didn't change all the spellings on this slide, and you see Taoism spelled with a T and with a D, and you will see that in your reading. The current spelling is with a D, but if you read older texts or maybe some British texts, you might see it with a T. It's pronounced Taoism, no matter if it's spelled with a D or a T. So in that time of the Cultural Revolution, they fell by 99%. But in Taiwan, they were able to continue their Taoist practices. Then when the Cultural Revolution ended, Taoism got revived, and currently there are about 25,000 Taoist priests and nuns in China and over 1,500 temples. This slide is the result of a rabbit hole dive that I took. I was fascinated by this. These, what you're looking at, are bamboo strips with calligraphy on them, and they're called the Bodian Chu slips. In 1993, the Chinese excavated a tomb in the province of Hubei. The tomb dates to 300 BCE, and the reason they've been hesitant to excavate a lot of tombs, a lot of that has to do with this reverence of the ancestors. But this tomb was opened by robbers and left open, and water got in, and these bamboo strips were floating in the water, and there were more than 800 of them. And they thought that it would all be ruined, so they very quickly excavated this tomb and found that of these more than 800 slips, there were Confucian text and other things, and 71 of them were texts from the Tao Te Ching, and they're considered the oldest extant version of the Tao Te Ching. And what's interesting, and what grabbed my attention, was that between the Taoist and Confucian texts in this tomb, the ideas of how these philosophies or religions were used in government it's different from the way that come down in Chinese history. It challenges a lot of the assumptions regarding that, and scholars are still arguing about it. And of course, this is an older version of calligraphy and had to be translated into contemporary Chinese calligraphy. And then it was first published in English in 2000 by Robert Hendricks. And I don't think it's anything that we really need to worry too much about or know about. I just thought it was interesting and thought I would share it with you. So I'm going to now talk about the Taoist 8 immortals. And these are the most prominent of the Taoist deities. They're represented in art in many forms over and over and over. And they're supposedly based on historical individuals whose rigid practice of Taoist ideals allowed them to attain immortality. They're carved from ivory. And notice how the artist uses the natural curve of the elephant tusk to give a sort of a graceful pose to each individual. And they're considered models of the ideal Taoist behavior. They also act as mediaries between humans and heaven. Each one holds an object that helps identify them. And I think that when I put them together here, I think I may have changed the order. They're in the gallery up on the wall above one of the cases down on the floor. And I don't think they're in this order. But and one of them is a woman, and you'll hear docents arguing all the time about which one is a woman, because some of them look rather androgynous. But the woman in this configuration is the first figure on the left, is the woman. And then all of them have rather fantastical stories. They're kind of fun sometimes to tour with children because the stories are so fantastical. For example, the second one from the left, his name is Li Ti Kwai, and look how skeletal he looks. You can see his ribs showing, and he's obviously an old man, kind of bent over, and he has a crutch that he uses to walk. Well, he was actually a young, very good-looking man, and he studied with Lao Tzu, and he was not yet immortal, but he had gone far enough that Lao Tzu gave him the ability to fly so that he could leave his body and his soul could fly. When he wanted to go somewhere, it was much faster. So he was going on a trip to heaven, and he asked his apprentice to watch over his body because he was going to fly, nurture his body and keep it well until he returned, and he wouldn't be gone more than 7 days, because if he was gone longer than 7 days, he'd become immortal and he was going to stay there. So he left, and the apprentice took good care of the body for 6.5 days. Then he got word that his mother was very ill and was dying, and he thought, well, it's only a half a day more. He's not coming. He's immortal. So he burned the body, had the body cremated. Well, he came back on the 7th day and no body. So he took the first body he found, which was an old poor person who had died of starvation. And that's why he's depicted the way he is here. That's the way he was. And from then on, his aim was to help poor people and to cure sick people and even help people achieve immortality. So all these 8 immortals are said to live on the Blessed or Penglai mountain island. Let's go visit that now. This earthenware hill jar is from our collection, and it's from the Han Dynasty, and it depicts the afterlife of the immortals. Now, you already know that they can fly. So this mountain is on an island in the sea, but it's totally covered with clouds and isn't visible. But they fly over it, and they see it, and they can get there. And their life is paradise. There's no pain, and everything you could want is there, including magical fruit that heals disease. It gives you eternal youth and can even raise the dead. Now, that's the answer I have for the afterlife, but I honestly can't tell you not everybody becomes immortal. So I don't know what happens, but I'm sure that a good Taoist is probably able to indulge in some of that. And then this is a bronze figure of the immortals that is in the British Museum, and it is showing them on mountains of immortality. And the hierarchical scale and the central placement tell us that this central figure is the most important, and indeed he is. This is Shao Tsing, the god of longevity. And his attribute is his high forehead. This is not a hat he's wearing. That is his forehead. So he has a very elongated head. So if you see that figure in an art, a work of art, you will know that it is the god of longevity. And this small bronze piece was made for a tomb. Any questions about the 8 immortals? Good, we'll zoom right along. You've already seen the concept of yin and yang. I believe Pam was the one who talked about that. But you just remember that the Taoists believe that everything in the universe is either yin or yang and must be in harmony. We have to give up the concept of absolute good and evil, because all opposites surround each other, and a part of it resides inside the other. And from this harmony, we get the essential elements such as water, fire, earth, metal, and wood, which are used with the qi, the life energy that creates all the things in the universe. And then another diagram that you will see sometimes in art is the 8 trigram furnace. And this comes from the yin and yang, and it illustrates the furnace that makes the golden elixir or pill of immortality. You see, immortality, immortality, immortality. That's what we're looking for. And can you see this trigram on this is a very small carved jade bottle that is in our gallery, and here is the yin and yang, and you can see the 3 bars here, and that the trigram goes around there. It gets a little lost in the shading. But so this all refers to the cosmology. So each of these concepts is made of 3 lines, either broken or unbroken, representing the yin and yang. And it's all this is also used in feng shui. If you're familiar with feng shui, this diagram is the bagua. It's often related to the creation of heaven to creation that took place when heaven and earth mated, and they gave birth to everything in the world that is made up of all different combinations of these 8 elements. So in the 18th century, it was very popular to recreate ancient bronze funerary objects and shapes. And you remember, this is the shape of a Kong. In ancient times, they would put carved jade Kongs next to the body in the grave. So they revived this shape in the 18th century with porcelain. You see it here in the blue and white porcelain. And this idea of the reverence shown to the ancient practices is part of the Confucian way of practicing filial piety, but the broken horizontal lines you see along here are symbolizing the Taoist yin and yang, once again, a conflation of symbols in one work of art. You also saw the Dipper mother before, and I remind you of her legend where she's bathing in the pond and the 9 lotus buds come up and they represent the stars of the Big Dipper, and only 7 of the 9 are visible, but there are 9. And again, we have a bit of a conflated figure here. She's sitting on lotus blossom, but lotus blossom, symbol of purity, is used in Buddhist art, it's used in Hindu art, and we see it here in this Taoist piece. This figure has 10 arms. The 2 in the center, the 2 pairs in the center, one is up in a praying position, and the other 2 are in a meditative position. Again, sort of like you would see in a Buddhist culture. In her top 2 hands are holding the sun and moon. The others hold either weapons or perhaps the elixir of immortality. But now we'll get into the cosmology a little bit more, because the sun, let me see if I get this right. The sun represents the essence of the yang, and the moon represents the essence of the yin. And then the Big Dipper is considered the center and source of all things. It's responsible for the rhythms of seasons. It distinguishes good and evil and controls good fortune and disaster. Again, you see those opposites, that yin and yang. And they also consider it the gateway to heaven. So there also sometimes talk about a triad of the sun, the moon, and the stars, which symbolizes the great unity. And its cosmology again goes deeper and deeper, and I'll just stop right there. Any questions so far? Michelle?
Up here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I see 10 arms.
Yeah, yes. There are 10 arms. Did I say something different? There are
But
5.
you said 9.
No, there are nine stars, 9
Oh.
lotus buds and 9 stars, but 10 arms on this figure. It varies sometimes, but this one has 10 arms. And
Thank you.
she's the mother of the Big Dipper, which is the 9. And those stars, by the way, are considered Taoist deities or spirits. Anything else?
Thank you.
Mhm. Now here, we're looking at 2 jade ritual scepters. And these scepters were held by the handle with this head up at the top, and they were symbols of political power. They were used in ceremonies, and they were a sign of authority and auspiciousness. And in the 18th and 19th century, when these wealthy scholars were collecting things like this and giving them as gifts, this was a very popular gift to give someone, because it would convey good fortune and prosperity. But the head of these scepters is in the shape of a Taoist magic mushroom called a lingji, or sometimes it's also called rui. And it, of course, represents immortality. They would try to make teas from this mushroom to for immortality. And you can't really see it very well here, but this is what the mushroom looks like, the real mushroom looks like. And it's still used today in Chinese medicine for lots of different things. The Taoists were looking at it for immortality. And I was able to find a picture that you can see better of the head of a scepter online. And it's often not just the mushroom that's on the head of it, but they would put it in nature and show leaves and maybe insects or maybe even a bird or something along with it, because they always like to have everything in harmony in nature, not just by itself. And now this thing is one of my very favorite things, which is not on view right now, but it is a hand scroll that's very, very long, about 90 feet long. And it was up for quite a few years. And what would happen would be they would show a segment of it. And then after 3 or 6 months, they would roll it over to another segment and so forth. And I kept waiting and waiting and waiting for the Empress to come. And it never came, at least I didn't catch it before it went back to rest in the vault, where I believe is where it is now. This is the ordination of Empress Zheng from the Ming Dynasty. Look at the bright colors and the gold on the colors throughout this thing that's 90 feet long are mostly primary colors. And they're very, very bright for the most part. And it is the actual documentation of her ordination. And what do I mean by that? And by the way, this is the Empress right here in the yellow robe. The Emperor followed Confucius, and he led his government following Confucian rules. And he allowed his wife to convert to Taoism. This was really unheard of. And also it was not often, there would not have been this kind of attention paid in art to the Empress. It was the Emperor who would be featured, not the Empress. So he allowed it. And then this is not only a visual documentation of it, but there are sections of calligraphy that document who all was there. And there were lots and lots of people, all different kinds of people, court ladies, immortals, Taoist gods who had halos. You can see there's 2 of them here, and generals, kings. Some of the kings had tigers, and it's just spectacular. And you can see this in the catalog that you got of our Chinese collection. It's on the cover, and there's a very nice close-up of the Empress, and there are also photos of the entire length of it. But notice the stylized Chinese clouds. These are very typical of Chinese art, and they're beautiful. And the people all seem to be floating in the clouds. It gives this real ethereal, like very spiritual look to it. Now focus on the border for a minute. And these are stylized dragons running along there. And they are symbolizing the chi, or the energy. They're also symbols of the emperor and the emperor's power. And by the way, this was also the official document. It's like the official government certificate. It's part of this scroll. So now we'll look at Taoism in landscape painting. The painting that you see here of the pine tree is from the Met, and it is showing a Taoist manifestation of the chi as a pine tree. The S curve is also reminiscent of the yin and yang symbol, and it also resembles a dragon. It looks very much, if you turned it on its side, it looks like those dragons running across that border on that scroll we were just looking at. And the dragons are not only a symbol of ruling power or physical power, but also spiritual power and virtuous character. Now, Taoists believe that the qi is focused and gathers at the place where a mountain meets a stream. And that's where this artist has chosen to place this palm tree, right at the foot of a mountain where there's a stream running by. And this palm tree also represents the strength of a ruler or a man who protects his subject, much like these outstretched limbs of the pine tree protect small little plants underneath it. Calligraphy, as you know, is the highest art form. It's valued even above painting. And it's thought that the qi flows through the arm of the calligrapher and down through the brush and onto the paper or the silk. And so here, where you see these dynamic brush strokes that the artist uses to give the image of this tree, would represent the spiritual and physical energy of the artist during the creation of the image. And this one is from our collection, and it's a very Taoist scene. Look at this lonely scholar standing here and just communing with nature. And he's got his arms outstretched, and he just seems to be in awe of nature. If we look at close-up of it, looking at this section on the right, this is a palm tree. You can see the pine needles, but he's draped a vine over it. And look how he uses precise, strong lines for that vine coming off that. But that's contrasted to the softness of this dotting. You see the little dots around here, this dotting technique, and I'm sure Bob is going to talk about paintings later. He'll talk about that. But that dotting technique is used to, you can see it over here as well. It creates that essence of atmosphere, of vapor, of the water coming up like it does from a waterfall. So looking over at the close-up on the left, notice the lack of detail. You just have what the barest amount of strokes that you need to convey this figure, and yet you get his sense of worship. You know that's a human being. The larger, heavier brush strokes create foliage here, and then just light, curvy, linear lines let us know that that's water and that it's flowing. We're seeing the energy of it. And this reminds me of, I don't know if you were all copied on an email that Hari sent out with a link to a YouTube clip, but I have it in my references. I encourage you to look at it. It's fun. It's not too long. It's from a symposium for designers of gaming designers for computer games. The last place you would think you would see Taoism. And this young man is giving a lecture on how he uses Taoist ideals when he is designing computer games. And he talks about that you don't start with the detail, that you take all the detail out, focus on the energy. And when you get the essence of the energy, now you can add in just enough detail to show the energy flowing. And anyway, I thought it was just so surprising to see that kind of thinking going into gaming. And we see this here in this, I think it's 17th century painting. And we'll finish up with textiles. This is a Taoist ceremonial robe from the Qing dynasty, and it's from the Asian Arts Museum in San Francisco. And robes like this would have been worn by Taoist priests during rituals and ceremonies. And this is the back of the robe, and we can see all sorts of things on here, a lot of the cosmology. If I expand it, can you still see that? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. So in the center, this is representing a palace that's surrounded by the lunar houses of Chinese astronomy. And then up here you see 3 discs, which are representing heavens. This disc here is gold, and that's the moon, and there's a bird sort of sitting on the moon, the sun. I'm getting ahead of myself. This is the gold, it's the sun. Over here is the moon, and here is a hare or a rabbit who's preparing the elixir of immortality. And again, look at the stylized Chinese clouds. These are a little flattened, but you still get that same sort of idea that you got in that scroll. And these are birds. See how their wings, and this is a crane, and there are also phoenixes. And while the immortals fly, sometimes they ride on top of the cranes and the phoenixes as they're going through the air. And then if we move down, these are that Lingxi mushroom that I talked about. And in the border, you see the waves of flowing water. That's a very constant theme, and flowing energy. And then all kinds of creatures from nature are in there, snakes and deer and birds and just all things from nature. So it's a very, very good representation of Taoism principles and cosmology. So just to summarize some of the key points, the Tao is the way, which is the path to longevity or even mortality. Stresses inaction, non-interference with the natural order of things, which creates harmony in nature. And yin and yang are 2 alternating phases of cosmic energy, which have to be in balance to bring cosmic harmony. And you should practice the 3 precious jewels daily. So here are the references I used. The one on the bottom is that YouTube reference about the Wu Wei being used by gamers. So that's it. Any questions or comments?
Michelle,
Looks like
again, I'm referencing the ordination of the Empress,
Yes,
90-foot scroll.
yes,
2 figures on the right appear to have halos.
yes, they do. There were something like 19 Taoist deities, and they have halos.
Oh,
So
okay.
you know that those are the deities. The guardians have weapons. Some of the kings have tigers, not all of them, but signs of power. And so those are, they just are different ways that they let you know who the different figures are.
Heather, you have a question?
No, actually, I had a comment, and that is those stylized clouds that are in the scroll of the ordination of the Empress. Those are also called Ru Yi clouds because they also resemble the Ru Yi. And you'll see those you'll see them in textiles also, but sculptures as well as the paintings.
Thank you.
Sandra?
I'll stop sharing so I can see everybody.
Okay. My first question supersedes the question I actually had. What's Ru Yi again?
The mushroom, the Lingxi mushroom. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. The clouds and the mushroom resemble.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Yeah, you know how the mushroom has all those little lines in it? Those clouds are kind of like that.
Right, yeah, it's clear. Okay, my other original comment did you design the artistry of the slides with the ombre colored background and the strips? That's so beautiful.
Oh, no, that's a
Standard or something?
it's a theme that's available. Yeah, it's standard.
Oh, okay, very nice.
I just like those colors. I like looking at them. They don't bother my eyes so much as other colors.
They're beautiful.
I'd like to add a little bit of something since everybody is so interested in Ru Yi. And why do people create all those Ru Yi? Ru Yi is the things to scratch your back. And after you scratch it, you feel so happy. And Ru Yi means happy. So that's the purpose of Ru Yi.
Oh, good.
And the other thing I want to share is we talk about a lot about eight immortals. And last time, Michelle mentioned about why does Lao Tzu writing ox? Actually, for a lot of immortals, they have their own specific animal to write on. Some of them are real animals. Some of them are make-believe animals. Let me share one screen to you so you will have a better idea. And all those animals, they are showing, representing something. Something like some of the people can just wear riding ox. Some of the noble high status people, they can ride on horses. So maybe you can take a look at this. Sometimes you will see these immortals with animals, something like this.
Oh, cool.
Can you see the picture here?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Riding a donkey, some of them riding qilin. And for example, you mentioned about the female figure in Taoism models, the He Xiangu. People will know that she's riding a donkey. Oh no, deer, because it's representing her characteristics too. No. Is it clear for you guys to see?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. Something I want to share with everybody.
Thank you, Jojo.
Jojo, what site is that? Is there a way you could text us that or email us that site where all the images are, but in English?
Let me copy the Chinese and then pass on the chat room. So you just copy and paste on the Google, you will find it. I try to type in a model as the animals they rise, but they don't come with this rich pictures.
Okay.
So I think the better way is just copy the Chinese character I pass on the chat room, and you'll find a lot of them. See this, they all writing on something.
And the Eight Immortals is JoJo's report. So she's going to tell us a lot
Exactly.
more about
Yeah,
it.
she's
on
going to tell you
Wednesday,
all about
No,
too.
I'll try.
Yeah. Anybody else have questions or comments? Richard?
Yes, just first, hi, Linda. Nice to
Hi,
see you
good
again.
to
Nice
see you, Richard.
Yeah, here I am in attack, more or less. Thank you. So listen, the Taoism and Buddhism basically developed more or less at contemporary time, though widely spread out. By the time Buddhism started transferring itself into China, many years had gone by after the development of Taoism. So I'm just curious how much, since these really were kind of competing religious philosophical beliefs, competing not just for the population, but competing for imperial favor, very particularly imperial favor. All right. Was there one particular element of Taoism that was influenced by Buddhism, or vice versa, that really had a major role in making it more popular, because they had to be sort of popularized too? It's a big question, but I'm wondering if there was like an influence between particularly Buddhism on Taoism once it got to China. Thank you.
First of all, it depended very much on the ruler at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because the ruler, whatever religion or philosophy the ruler espoused was pretty much what it was, what it was, not completely, but and who knows, there were, for example, and those of you who know Chinese history better than I do will know where this comes from, but there was someone who said that he used Confucian law for governing, and at home he lived by Taoism.
Mm.
So they sort of, they took in, I don't, as far as I know, there wasn't like one thing, although I did mention that at one point some people liked the less rigid rules and so much of Taoism compared to Confucianism, which is all about order and lineage and all that sort of thing. Whereas Taoism, just you go with the flow, you take it as it comes. And and with Confucianism, this is one of the things that those what is it, Guodian, I think that's the right term, those slips of bamboo, that text that they found in the 1990s, we were always taught that Confucius government was done by merit. So anybody who studied and who could learn and so forth could move up the ranks. It wasn't done by inheritance. And evidently those texts that they found kind of dispute that. So I don't know, but the scholars are, as far as I know, are still arguing about that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else that knows more than I do want to answer Richard's question?
Heather's got a hand up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I second what you say, Linda, about being less strictures in Taoism. And so you have the Eightfold Path in Buddhism. And so there, and depending if you're Theravada or Maya,
Yeah.
how you pronounce that one.
Mahayana.
You really, Mahayana. So but there's this aspect of discipline and self-discipline in terms of the meditation and following that Eightfold Path, and whether you need to do it as a monk or not. And even if you don't, you still have to really work in a very precise way. Whereas the Taoism just doesn't have those kinds of strictures associated with it. The other point I wanted to make, though, is that there is a lot of syncretism, at least with from what I know, Buddhism incorporating elements of Taoism. So we have a wonderful hanging scroll in our collection that's called a land and water painting. So there's a whole series of these kinds of paintings. If you look at it, you can see it's Taoist priests. But this kind of a painting is used in a Buddhist ceremony for transitions, often, either seasonal, as I recall, or to honor a person who's sick that you wish to get well, or someone who has just transitioned in the death process and you're wishing them something positive in their next life situation. At any rate, the water and land paintings, they're Taoist paintings incorporated into this Buddhist ritual and practice. So I found that very interesting. I'm not sure if there are Taoist rituals that incorporate the Buddhism in that same, way, but certainly Buddhism incorporates the Taoism. And by the way, that land and water scroll that I'm referring to, I believe it is from the Ming Dynasty. So that's my addition to the conversation.
Great, thank you.
Sandra? You're muted, yeah.
Okay. No, I just found it interesting, all these tribes from the north, formerly pastoral, nomadic people and so on, who ended up coming in and clobbering the northern parts of China at various phases. It was really, and they still basically had their shamanism religion, but first of all, they were smart enough to know they couldn't impose that on this Confucian order of government and the popular Taoism of the people. so they just tolerate it. And I think that tolerance, I mean, that's what we found in India as well, where the Jains and the Buddhists and the Hindus and everyone was fine with each other. And not only did they tolerate each other, but they shared so much of this symbolism and so forth. Just, I mean, it would be nice if that could happen more
Yes.
today. Be so nice.
And we could use some of that flexibility and just go with the flow. Don't fight everything.
Mm.
And change isn't always bad. And change continues. So if it's not so good, well, it'll change again. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, your image of the water and the Grand Canyon was interesting.
Eventually
Yeah.
it will happen. If you just have patience and go with it, it will happen.
Yeah. Well, anybody else have any comments or questions for Linda? Great. Well, thank you so much, Linda. As always, a very clear and excellent presentation for us. Really terrific. So it's just after 11 o'clock and we have Bob who's going to talk to us about Chinese painting. So why don't we take a break until 11:15 and then get started with Bob. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Bob, are you there? This is Ray.
I'm here. How are you?
Hey, you ready for Friday? I'm supposed to be your,
Oh yeah, I'm all set. I think it's
Okay.
what, 11 o'clock?
no, it's 10, I think. And have you communicated with the group?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what time do you want me to open it? 9:45, 9:40?
Yeah, 9:40, 9:30. I
Okay,
always like to, try out the slides, make sure I'm okay, which I haven't done today, actually. And hopefully it'll work out today.
okay. So we'll see you then.
Okay, very good. So you're staying for the rest of this, are you?
Uh, I'm definitely wanted to hear some of what you had to say, but I definitely wanted to talk to you since you didn't answer my email.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, thank you. You got me.
Right. Huh, okay, I got you.
All right.
So Bob, are you there? Bob?
I'm here.
Yes, hi. You think you could talk to them a little bit about the other museum and what it's all about? And
Oh, you sure?
yeah, because I don't think most of them know about that. What's happening over there right now?
Well, we haven't decided when we're going to open. We're waiting for the numbers to improve. Lots of things are still being canceled. It's very upsetting. I was going to go to a meeting in November, had hotel reservations in Boston, and they got canceled right out from under me. And hospital I work at was going to have a gala this last weekend. What's it? Today's Monday, Saturday night, and they canceled it last week. So things
What
are
hospital do you work at?
at Palomar.
Oh, okay. Are you a nurse or a doctor?
I'm a doctor.
Okay.
Mhm.
I worked at Kaiser.
Do you? Oh, which Kaiser?
Cyan and Otai. I worked in the OR.
Okay. Yeah, they're building a brand new hospital in San Marcos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you drive up that way, it's amazing. It's looks like it's about half finished.
Great. That's good. I've been retired for a while, so I'm happy.
So how many of are you, Becky? Are you a first quarter person? Or
Yes, I just started as of like 3 weeks ago.
How many are you? How many in your
Um,
freshman group?
I'm not 100% sure. Is it like 7 or 8?
Well,
I-
we started, I think we're at 5 right now.
Oh, yeah.
These
Yeah.
are difficult times, and I started. I applied in 2015, and I did my training in 16 and 17, and then I had a little over 2 good years to do touring before COVID closed the world down.
Oh, yeah.
So I had 18 and 19, and then in 20 the world closed, and then it's still closed. It's amazing, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
It's hard to
it
believe.
is. It's hard to travel. I heard Spain, you can't, if you get into Spain, I talked to someone today. We were walking our dogs, and she's from Madrid. And you can, in Barcelona, you can just fly in, but you have to stay within a certain period, a certain distance in the city. You can't go out of the city.
Well, the countries that have done an excellent job in vaccinating their people don't want to have anything have things upset. And I just read that the most vaccinated country in the world is not Israel, but it's Portugal.
Oh,
And
really?
Good.
Portugal is like 95%. And They've eliminated all restrictions in Portugal. You know,
Oh, good.
nobody not vaccinated, and there's like no COVID.
No one got vaccinated, you said?
No, I say there's no one has not gotten vaccinated.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So they have no COVID in Portugal.
Oh, wonderful. Good for them.
Yeah.
Is everybody pretty much coming back here? Give another minute.
Why don't I see if I can share my screen?
Sure.
Oh, this is easy.
Yep.
There it
There you
is.
go. There it is.
Yeah. Easier than I thought.
Yeah, this Zoom is has really saved our lives
Oh yeah, it's
because
just
it's
not
so
ideal.
easy and yeah.
It's easy, but it's not ideal.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So if everybody's back, this is Bob Stein. Bob and I were in training together, and he finished just before I did. And just so you know, Bob was working when he did training. He's a cardiologist here in town up at Palomar, and worked for his training and then retired. So he devotes a lot of time to the museum and also to the San Diego Chinese Historical Museum. So I hope he'll tell you a little bit about that too. So here's Bob.
Happy to. Hi, folks. Happy to be here. Chinese painting is just this enormous subject for a variety of reasons. You know, when you're talking about Baroque, you're talking about a shortish period of time. And here we're talking about thousands of years in an enormous country, 1 billion plus people. So it's a gargantuan topic. And so we're just going to be touching on things. And that's probably about the best we can do. So I'm going to be talking about Chinese painting and how to read them, how to look at them. And but I will make a quick comment about the San Diego Chinese Historical Museum. It was started about 25, 30 years ago in what was formerly a mission church that was built by the Congregationalist ministers who came out to San Diego to minister to the Chinese community. And it has all sorts of interesting exhibits in it that deal with the Chinese experience in the United States and in California and in San Diego. And it's actually a lot of fun, and they have rotating exhibits. We have speakers every either once or twice a month on Saturday mornings, which are remarkably interesting. We had a woman talk just this last Saturday on the Silk Road and its Chinese influence on Middle East Arab cultures and vice versa. And she traced, it was so interesting, she's an artist herself, and she traced a certain screen design from country to country to country to country. And it was remarkable. And she has a little map with little screens in India and China and Damascus, and Egypt. It's cool. And she bought one herself. She bought a modern reproduction of the pattern. So in any event, San Diego Chinese Historical Museum is also a wonderful museum. And I got involved in it because of Lily Birmingham, who was a previous a docent educator who's now taking a break, and she's coming back imminently. And so if you guys, particularly in 2022, would like to have more to do with that museum or join it, we would love to have you. You can talk to me. Talk to me then. The reason I say 2022 is because I'm thinking right now it's closed, although we still do children's school outreach programs, and we still have our Zoom conferences on weekends. but the museum should be open. We're right now planning on, we have a video of the tour of the museum, and we're planning to have a QR code on the street so people can actually take a tour of the museum without entering it. So let's talk about a little bit about Chinese painting. And I'm already listening to some of you folks who clearly know more than I do about lots of this stuff. And I was also hoping that there would be no Chinese speaker, because that way I wouldn't embarrass myself with mispronunciations, but apparently no such luck with that. So I'll just do my best. This should be sort of fun. Everybody will learn a little bit. And here are the things that one would need to do a painting. You would need ink. You would need a variety of brushes, red waxy ink for the seal, signature seal, and we'll go into. I've got this great example that you'll love to see. And how the brush is held. I've got another woodcut of how woodblock print of how the brush is held too, which you'll find interesting. And this is obviously very modern. It's a photo, and you can see all the colors. And so the traditional artwork was mostly in black and white. And this is just an example of the different types of brush strokes. And calligraphy and art just commingle. In classical Chinese thinking, they're almost as one, with calligraphy coming first, perhaps. And for purposes of reference, I just have a dynasty table here. And I'm going to give all these slides to Michelle as soon as we're done this talk. So it'll be up in the internet. And also for reference, I mentioned a variety of dynasties, and this has something to do with the art as well. Chan Buddhism in China started in the Tang Dynasty, and a lot of art comes directly from that. And the civil service exams actually began before the Tang Dynasty in the Sui Dynasty in 605. And those exams were brilliant. They created this class of scholar bureaucrats and also called literati. And it broke the hereditary nature of control of the country to more something a little bit more democratic. Although the civil service exam was far from democratic. You had to be a wealthy person to take a year off of your life to study for it. And the exam itself would involve calligraphy, art, poetry, and music, and the things that were felt to be important to the cultured mind. And the civil service exam started in 605, and the system continued through the 20th century and ended basically just before the last dynasty ended. It ended in 1905. So it's interesting. And then it became entrenched further in the Song dynasty. And then with the Mongol dynasty, the Yuan dynasty, the literati were then exiled. And I have a funny painting where they very subtly gave a dig at the Mongol dynasty. And here's a great painting, and it's a horse, and there's a post behind the horse, and you've got the horse prancing and smiling and baring its nostrils, flaring its nostrils, and arching its neck. It's a very cool painting, and then it seems to be covered with these red seals every which way you look, just covered with seals and covered with writing. And it's so different from Western art. And we would, if we got a painting, particularly an expensive painting, the last thing we would do would be to touch it or to mark it or to take out your Bic pen and scribble your name on it. But quite the opposite, in China. And in China, if you owned a work of art, you would meditate and you would be moved by it, and you would think of some poetic sentences and you'd write them down on your artwork. And then to show your ownership, you would use your seal and you'd put your seal on it. And so you might say, well, which poetry is by Han Gan and where is his seal? And the answer is, it's not there. It's not there. And so what I have here is a little bit of a code as to what's what. And basically, the seals are all by owners, none by the artist. And the inscriptions were all by a variety of owners and emperors. So this was a very high quality. So then where is Han Gan's seal and poetry? And the answer is, it's not there. How do we even know he did it? And the answer is because it's very widely referenced, and it's referenced by a variety of people. This painting, The Night Shining White. And so it's widely referenced. And interestingly, if you notice that the Qing Emperor Qianlong, if I'm pronouncing that right, is number 12, and you'll notice that he put his seal marks all over this. There have to be more than a dozen, and all over this. And other emperors and other people put their marks. And that emperor, the Qing Emperor, also did the poetry just to the left of the post, and a lot of the poetry towards the right, just to the left of the column of seals. Much of that was done by the same emperor. And not only that, you can remember this because you're going to be seeing another painting in a few minutes. And guess who wrote poetry on that too? You'll find out. Well, it's no guess, it's the same guy. So this is actually a very interesting example of Chinese artwork back in the day, and how it's handled and how it's looked at and how it's addressed. And so it's treated with reverence. And the idea of adding poetry to it is, and adding your seal mark, is to show your reverence for the work of art. And the subject matter, the horse, is an interesting subject matter. A horse can be more than just a horse. And the horse is a symbol of China and symbol of China's strength. And judging a horse is a metaphor for judging people and conscientiousness in governing people. And Han Gan was very anxious to portray the legs of the horse correctly. And you'll recall that the horse movement was largely done incorrectly. If you see paintings by English artists in the 1700s and 1600s, and even we in our museum, in our tomb room, we have a ceramic of a polo player, and the leg movements of the horse in the polo player are quite incorrect. And it took 1880s for Edward Muybridge and Thomas Akins in Philadelphia to get it right using a series of cameras. And but yet Han Gan beat him to it by what, 1500 years. I'm now going to mention a couple books. You wonder why Chinese art looks like Chinese art and why it's so relatively uniform in its appearance. And the answer is, well, there's a complicated answer, and this is not the answer, but part of the answer is that there were manuals that were published in the 1600s that were widely followed. And we have often on exhibit some pages from the 10 Bamboo Studio Manual. And the 10 Bamboo Studio Manual was created by a publisher, and it references 10 bamboo trees in front of his house or studio, and hence the name. And he hired over 100 people to create his book. And so how would you make a book of art? You would use woodblock printing. And so the woodblock printing would involve ink makers, calligraphers, printers, carvers, paper makers, in addition to the gentleman himself. And it has a variety of sections. And I'm sorry about the Zoom. You know, some of you may think the Zoom is great because you don't have to leave your house, but if we were in the museum together, I would be passing this around. And this is just this lovely book with beautiful artwork in it. And it's just stunning. It's just a stunning reproduction. This doesn't have all 320. It has a number, and they're excellent reproductions, and then it's translated into English. So it's a cool book. Sorry, lost my phone out. And so a cool book, and it's a how-to book, and it has gradations of color that foreshadowed the ukiyo-e process in Japan in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. And if you look over my shoulder, I have on my dining room wall a couple of ukiyo-e woodblock paintings by a guy named Toyokuni from the early 1800s. And these are scenes from Tales of Genji. And there's a manual on how to do everything, and with beautiful illustrations. I showed you a few of them. And this resulted in a relative uniformity of style in the country. And then there was another book called the Manual of the Mustard Seed Garden. And it was called that in a romantic way because the mansion of the person who commissioned the book was called the Mustard Seed Garden. And again, it's a manual for landscape painting. And the Chinese influence, this woodblock business influenced Chinese and Japanese art, woodblock and other woodblock. And there's chapters on orchids and on rocks, a rock chapter, trees. It's an amazing book, and it's a very cool book. And then later parts were added, and this is a little bit later in the 1600s compared to the 10 Bamboo Studio book. And this is the mustard, MSG stands for Mustard Seed Garden, not monosodium glutamate. And it's just filled again with instructional pages. And I just want to mention formats for Chinese art, and hanging scrolls, very, very common. And again, it's certainly no coincidence that that Chinese is written either across horizontally or up and down. And so the hanging scrolls will mimic or follow the way the writing is done. And then hand scrolls and album leaves, very similar conceptually and how they're utilized to the Indian miniature paintings where the wealthy person would own the miniature paintings, have them in folios on tabletops and never on walls. Although hanging scrolls would certainly be on walls, but the album leaves would be on a tabletop and they'd be picked up and passed around. And fans as well were common instruments for art, a common format again for the wealthy. And I just have some examples here of a fan and a hanging scroll and so forth. And again, you can see the seal marks and the poetry written on them, sometimes by the artist, but often not. And the one in the middle, again, I'm not sure you can see my arrow, but it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 seals that I can see, and they're surely by owners, not necessarily the artist himself. Common practice would be for the artist to paint the painting, write a poem, sign his name, and then apply the seal. And then the owner, who appreciates the artwork, would meditate in front of it, sign his name, apply his own seal, and many times add poetic sentences. Depending on who you were, the ones that we saw with that horse by Han Gan, those were emperors who were doing that writing, so they sort of felt they had a certain obligation to add something lofty to artwork that they possessed. And the hand scroll would be read often from right to left, but the vertical scroll usually from top down, sometimes bottom up. And paintings were often copied, and the copy became more famous. We're going to see an artwork that is derivative because the actual artist, 100% of his artwork is gone. And yet, how do we know him? We know him because he was famous and he was widely copied. So we have many copies that are attributed to him, and but yet his original artwork is actually gone. I'm going to bring back the horse again, and again, the horse and the groom were again a common theme in artwork. The horse we already addressed, and the idea of the groom and the horse together was a metaphor for a scholarly talent, and it was often a dig at the Yuan dynasty, who downgraded the literati and so forth. And so they're always excellent steeds, but not always excellent judges of steeds. So it's an interesting comment. And again, you see the seal marks just covering this work of art along with poetry. And again, I don't have a clue whether the poetry was written by the artist or someone subsequent. And so the Chinese thought of art as a combination of calligraphy and the visual art and poetry, and with perhaps calligraphy coming first. So if that's the case, it all makes sense. It all makes sense that the artwork would have writing on it, and the writing would be in beautiful calligraphy, and the writing would perhaps have colorful descriptors. And it also makes sense that if you owned a work of art and you were of an artistic or poetic bent, you would add your poetry to the work of art, which was completely acceptable. And the civil service exam, which I already alluded to, is part and parcel of all this, because the civil service exam dealt with calligraphy and art and the civilized mind, and creating these scholar officials or bureaucrat scholars. And so the art would be a product of calligraphy. Color was felt to be distracting. And so many of these works were done with just ink and wash. Color was sometimes done sparingly, but then later on, especially the Northern school would have more color. And we'll get to the Northern and the Southern school in a minute. So we'll talk about that. And so I mentioned the mountains and the water would be seen in a metaphorical sense. The literati versus the court painters. The literati were often these retired civil servant, bureaucrat scholars who then became poets and sometimes artists, calligraphers, and they had a Confucian bent. If you'll recall that Confucianism is about people's relationships with people currently and in the past, relationships with ancestors, relationships with co-workers, superiors, family members, and the like. Then a nostalgic art would be a Confucian thought. This was tended to be referred to as Southern style, although as we'll get to it a little bit, North and South was more of a concept than a geographical term. So sometimes you could have the Northern style in the physical South and vice versa, from what I read. And so here we have scholars and amateur artists. We have a poet done sparingly and just monochromatic, a handful of brushstrokes. Beautiful work, right? I mean, you get the feel for the gentleman in a very sparing fashion, which is very cool. And the concept was culture, literature, and the like. And it sounds like a great life on retirement. And you could join the bureaucracy on passing the civil service exams. And they may or may not be artists, the literati, but they certainly were expert in calligraphy, because they wouldn't have become literati. They wouldn't have been able to pass the civil service exams if they weren't experts in calligraphy. So they had an excellent command of brush and ink. And as you'll see, again, in China, the concept of using the brush, holding the brush, the ink, the calligraphy and the art basically flowed one into the next. And it all makes sense when you realize all that. And then the Confucian ideals of relationships and the past, and the like, and personal thoughts would be expressed via art. So art was much more of a reflective element than decorative as we might see today. Although again, it would vary depending on the artist. And the subjects could be landscapes. Many artists, just like today, would be experts in one versus another. Figurative, flowers, court paintings, and so forth. Some specialized in porcelain, silk, and nature. And again, those manuals that we talked about were how-to books on flowers and animals and fish and the like. The mustard seed garden book and the 10 bamboo studio manual. And here we have the vastness of creation. And so this landscapes were often northern ideal. And so guess who did the calligraphy in the upper right? And you got it correctly. The same one who wrote over half of the Han Gan painting that we saw earlier. So Emperor Qianlong of the Qing dynasty. So this one, I have a close-up of this about the vastness here. And there's much more to these, many of these paintings than meets the eye initially, if one looks closely. And so here we see a little close-up of the scene and the like. And so some artists actually would equate calligraphy and painting, and one must use flying white cursive script to draw rocks. And flying cursive script is pretty self-explanatory, although later on towards the end, I do have a bit of examples of different types of Chinese writing. And my Chinese friends tell me that the flying cursive script is the hardest to do, because you have to do it just right on the fly, while the standard standard script can be done in a slow and careful fashion. So it's actually an interesting thing. So the flying cursive script, which looks very loose, may be the hardest to do well. And again, we were struck by the seal marks covering the artwork and the like. Perfection of nature, Southern song style, very meticulous but simple. And we're going to talk now about artists showing proficiency, because here you're able to see each stalk, each leaf, beautifully done. And again, this work of art had more than one owner, hence the seal marks that are covering it, and so forth. We're going to talk about symbolism in Chinese art, and then we're going to mention religion, although we already alluded to Confucianism. And Linda mentioned that as well. Obviously, she talked about the coexistence of Confucianism and Taoism, but honestly, there's no reason why one couldn't have in one's life Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism all basically conforming and without clashing in one's life. So it's they're not mutually exclusive like Western religions, where you can't believe one way and a different religion has different beliefs. And so it's just it's quite different. And they say in Japan, most everybody has Shinto religion, but then for end of life and funerals, they use Buddhist elements. So they commonly have dual religions. So here's symbolism in Chinese art. As you know, every symbol, every animal, every flower tends to have a symbolic equivalent, often due to the homonymic nature of the words. And dragons in China, of course, are never evil, like St. George slaying the dragon, but they're always good fortune, representative of the emperor. And jade, purity, fish represents abundance. And here we have a beautiful fan again. And I'm going to mention Chan Buddhism, in Japan called Zen Buddhism. And in the North, enlightenment is felt to come gradually after years of meditation. And in the South, in the Southern school, the concept would be that by taking one's knife blade and striking a bamboo shoot, one could abruptly hear the sound and have a transformative experience and develop enlightenment and achieve a nirvana state. So, and this painting shows, therefore, a Chan moment, and it shows the 6th Chan patriarch chopping bamboo. And so it's an interesting idea. And here we have two people. There's somebody on the right. There's somebody right here. And this is the master. And this is the scholar meeting the master. And so it's a beautiful painting. And all moments of enlightenment come in a flash. Why distrust your eye and value your ear, just as between water and clouds? Don't say there is nothing there. So very lovely paintings. So north and south, I bring this up not because you need to be an expert in separating out north from south, but only so that you understand that there was a north style and a south style. And they were different, although on a given work of art, it's awfully difficult to be sure of one versus another. Sometimes it is, but other times not. The Southern school was more of the retired professional scholar bureaucrats passing the civil service exams, and it had the clouds and the mist, and it had the dot style to create mists and clouds, inner reality. And the term Southern School was coined by Dong Chu-chang. And the Northern School tended to be more professional, formal painters, and it was more worldly, decorative, and realistic. But as I mentioned, the North and the South were not necessarily, regarding art anyway, were not necessarily geographic terms, but more stylistic terms. And the North might pursue more panorama, while the South pursued delicacy and softness and subtlety. And so you're sort of getting a bit of a concept of how the South would be different: the mists, the subtlety, the fog, while the North might have more color as well. So here's a Northern School painting at the Nelson Atkins Museum. That's in Kansas City, which is on my bucket list, actually. I have a very short bucket list. I've been most places, but I've never been to the Nelson Atkins Museum, and I've read such wonderful things about it. Love to go there. And here's a Southern School painting, which is, if you read this, you'll chuckle. And it's Wang Wei, but then when you read it, you say, well, none of his paintings have survived. Well, what you're looking at then is not a painting by Wang Wei, but a style. And how do we know about him? Because he was so wonderful, people wrote about him, but it's so long ago that all of his paintings on paper and silk have all been just destroyed. His art was masterful, innovative, and we see it in the pupils of Wang Wei, some of whose work has survived. And so we can see his pupils in museums. And he was an example of the Southern School. And you sort of see the clouds, and you see, looks like snow, and you see the fog and the dots, and you see just what we've talked about. And I'm just going to mention the Dunhuang Grottos, which is the westernmost area of the Silk Road. As you know, the Silk Road is the road is ancient, and it's not a road, but a series of paths by land. And there were also sea routes as well, connecting East and West, Middle East, Eastern Europe to China, Southern Asia, India, and the like. And the term was coined by the Red Baron's uncle. And the Red Baron from World War I fame, his uncle, Baron van Richthofen, they were both named Baron van Richthofen, coined it. He was a geologist and a naturalist and a traveler, the uncle. And he, in 1877, coined the term Silk Road, which really caught on. He has a mountain named after him in Colorado also, Mount Richthofen. And the grottos were a pilgrim destination for Buddhists, and there are hundreds of caves cut into the rocks covered with artwork. And we've had speakers over the years who've been there and have these beautiful slides that they've shown of it. Here's just one, which, sad to say, is not that good a resolution, but you get an idea of how overwhelming it must be like. And by the way, you'll notice the halos here too. So you've got halos in Buddhism, halos in Taoism, halos in Christianity. halos in Hinduism. The Hindu Rajputs would put a halo around their heads because they felt they were descendants of Rama. And so many religions will use the halo motif to demonstrate holiness. And here's the calligraphy slide I promised to show you. And the seal script on the left is ancient, and you should recognize it from the tomb room, because in the tomb room, the bronzes that have writing in them, they're hard to read, but if you look closely, you can see the writing in the dings. And it's generally seal script. And then way on the right is that running cursive, the one that I mentioned that my Chinese friends tell me is the hardest to master. And in between are other scripts with standard script in the middle, most widely used today. And the calligraphy, again, being very tightly intertwined with the art, very tightly intertwined. And just here, a similar symbol in a variety of different scripts. And Wang Duo's calligraphy and artwork. And again, we see the dots on the hills and very pretty but simple black and white ink painting. And here's one that has a scroll painting with enormous detail. And it's more detailed than you might imagine. I have some close-ups next, and you can see people in a sampan. They're fishermen and misty clouds. Isn't that beautiful? You can see the mist. You can. It really transports you to another area. So very cool. And here's a fan. And again, if you look at this fan, it's just lovely. And this would be things that upper class people would have. You can read the signature and the seal on the left of the artist. And you can look at the fishermen on the left. You can see the different tone and different appearance on the right. And it's really filled with beautiful art and beautiful tonal variations, which is makes it even more absorbing, the variations between left and right. And then I just bring this up just to, not for you to memorize or know, but just to realize that there were lots of these painters, and the professional painters tend to be the North people. The amateur literati scholar painters would be referred to as the Southern school, and but all beautiful and just different styles. And here we have one of the four Wangs and a mountain scene in a scroll. And you can see heaps of mountains and heaps of trees, one on top of each other. And you can see the intricate nature of it, far from loose brushstrokes that you would associate with Southern style. So this is clearly a Northern style painting. And you know, he would be a court painter and famous as a court painter. And I think I have close-ups of this as well. And yeah, here you can see close-ups and you can see this incredible tiny detail and you say, wow. And so barely visible from 2 or 3 feet away, you'd have to get close to it. And by the way, I mentioned just as a tool, since you're going to be going to the galleries and the gallery attendants don't want you to get too close, your phone has a very strong magnifying element in it. And what you do is you take your iPhone and go to settings and then go to accessibility, and inaccessibility is magnifier. And the magnifier is a very powerful magnifier, and it's so powerful you don't even have to get close to the artwork, which is the whole point. You can stand at a nice distance away, use the magnifier in your phone, and see fine little itty bitty artwork. And not only is it useful, but it's something that you can tell the people you're giving tours to, so they won't have to get close. So technology changes so rapidly. For our Indian miniatures, we used to have stacks of magnifying glasses, but they're no longer needed because of phones. Android has the same thing. You go to settings for an Android phone and go to accessibility, and they have a magnifier in it as well. Very similar, with a triple tap feature to it. And so here are two major styles: the meticulous court style, northern style on the top, and the loose brush style on the bottom. And by now you're basically almost an expert. So you're feeling comfortable with Chinese art in just a half an hour, and it takes nothing. And here's more symbolism: bamboo, orchid, plum blossom, chrysanthemums, and what they mean. And you can see it. And the painting on the upper right is cool, particularly because you see these multiple elements of poetry, and surely done by different people. So so this is an example of owners adding to the artwork, which I find to be just such a wonderful concept, just wonderful. And then this is my last slide. And landscape paintings are comically often vertical. We refer to landscape as a synonym for horizontal, and we call portrait vertical, but in Chinese artwork, landscapes were vertical, and thus this, but not always, but many times. And it's no coincidence that the calligraphy is vertical too, which is where these scrolls come from conceptually. And then heaven and earth is emphasized more than breadth and depth because of the up and down nature. And I mentioned the things that are in the artwork, and man-made structures. So we've gone over a variety of topics. We've gone over different styles, religions, the North, the South, the seals, the poetry, color use, the two manuals, the two famous manuals. There's one more thing that I would like to bring up, and that is there's a wonderful book. And while I don't necessarily recommend you purchasing, unless you're dying to, the bamboo studio book and the mustard seed garden, but the I don't know if you have it. This is published by the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it's called How to Read a Chinese Painting. And again, Zoom is just not ideal for talks like this. You know, this is stuff we would pass around the room if we were in a classroom together. And but this is a wonderful book, and it's a wonderful primer. And I got the horse with the dozens of seal marks from this book. It's all right here. So this is something you might want to consider purchasing. And with that, I'm actually finished, and I'm going to stop screen sharing now if I'm able to. Oh, I did. So that worked out. So happy to entertain questions, although I think some of you folks may know more than I do about some of this, but happy to get questions nevertheless. Or if some of you do know more, feel free to mention thoughts that you have. Sandra, I see you have your hand up.
Yes. So were the scrolls, whether they were hanging or hand scrolls, were they always paper? Could you make scrolls out of silk, or was that too?
No, they were often made out of silk as well.
Silk as well. Okay. My other comment or question is, you showed on your slide, you showed the Dunhuang grottos as the westernmost point of the Silk Road. Did you mean easternmost, or am I just really confused here?
What I meant was westernmost in China.
Oh, in China. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I wasn't, no, it was my imprecision. And you caught me. Okay, but that's it. Any other questions? Becky, yeah, what would you
Hi,
like to?
Bob. What were
Hi.
you said with the iPhone? You go to settings, and then where do you go from there?
Let me get my phone, which I tossed on the floor after it rang.
Oh,
My phone. But, uh-oh, it's my eye doctor. Okay, let's, yeah, you go to settings, and from settings, you scroll up to accessibility. You hit
okay.
accessibility, it's right there.
Oh,
And there's
Zoom.
magnifier, just
Magnify.
turn it on, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
has directions, and it has directions in it on how to set it up. And I have it as an app on my home screen. And
Okay.
so I don't even have to do that when I go to a museum. I just go to app on the home screen and use it. And you should tell the people you do touring with to do that. They'll be impressed, presuming that we ever do touring again. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
Only a
Thank
matter
you.
of time.
And
that
then
right, Michelle?
also, do you
It's
have
only a matter of time.
That's right. That's what they're telling us.
One
Yeah.
of these days.
Yeah. Also, do you know Lucy Wang at the Spanish Village? She is a Chinese painter, brush painter.
I actually don't.
Oh, you might stop by because she teaches all that, how to do the bamboo and everything. It's she's in the when you go into Spanish Village, she's on the left.
On the left. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Bob?
And Michelle, I'll send this to you in about 5
Yeah.
minutes as soon as I
Okay.
get off this.
Yeah, terrific. Well, thank you so much. You covered so much material in that. I think it's gonna take everybody another viewing.
Well, it's
on,
just an overview. I
yeah,
mean, there's so
yeah,
much. I mean, as I said, again, Baroque art is what, 100 years or 200 years. Well, we're talking thousands of years in an enormous country, different styles. It's just, it's overwhelming. Ceramics similarly, right? It's just overwhelming.
Yeah. And our works change all the time in the museum because they can't be exposed for long to light. So they're up for a limited amount of time. So you'll notice if you go back through past reports, you will see reports on paintings that we can't see at the moment. But Heather, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, I have a comment. Bob, I think it was this past summer or spring, you gave a talk for SDCHM on the northern and southern schools of painting.
I didn't. I know what you're referring
Which
to.
one?
You're
Somebody.
referring to David Miles.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, you're correct. Still worth mentioning because I believe that is posted on either the SDCHM website or potentially their partner site, the San Diego State Chinese Cultural.
It's posted on the
yeah.
on the San Diego Chinese Historical Museum site.
Right. So that's another great resource to, it's a more in-depth pursuit of these differences between the two schools.
Well, David and I are friends, and so actually I'm the one I clued him in on this book, and so that he used that painting as well of the horse by Han Gan, and so he used that as well in his talk. So
yeah, I have a copy of that book, and actually there are others in the series, like How to Read. I think it is Chinese Ceramics, and they're very easy reading, frankly, and extremely informative. So yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah, the Met is always a good resource in their books, and also online they have that whole timeline of art history, and they have lots of articles that are very readable and clear. So always, that's a good place to start.
there are also books that are available from another resource are books from the San Francisco Asian Art Museum, which is this enormous collection, largely donated by the now disgraced Olympic President Avery Brundage, whose bust they removed. And they have a little sign up that explains why it's no longer visible. And but they kept his art. They kept his art, and that's a great museum. So,
Okay. Anything else for
Um,
Bob?
I just
Jody?
add a YouTube link for the Green Sea Master book. In the book, they teach you how to draw, like, for example, a pine tree or orchid or any kind of animal. And they have like 300 series teach you how to do Chinese painting. If you are tired of reading a book and you want to just feel how does it come out with a pine tree, you can take a look.
oh, this the mustard seed book is just absolutely amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. It's a very cool book, and we usually have a couple of wood blocks from the 10 Bamboo Studio visible at all times. But as Linda mentions, because of light, we take them down and we replace them with others. But I think, what did I say? There were 270 or 370. There's lots of them, so we have no shortage for the rest of our lives. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for listening. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Bob, for an excellent lecture. And we will get the slides up as soon as I can. And then the YouTubes, I'm working with David to get those up and get the links working, because I know he got some up over the weekend, and there will be more coming, including Bob's lecture that we just had. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Michelle, can I jump in for one little comment? I don't know if everyone's following the chats, but I wrote a little chat about the mustard seed that we have in the archive of the library. We have some very old editions showing the Asian bookbinding process, and they're on, I don't know, rice paper or some very lightweight paper. I would like to I'm going to work with Lucas and see if we can maybe bring a few of those out of the archive and put them under plexiglass so you can see them at some point when you visit the library. I can't promise that will happen, but I think it would be fun to see them in person rather than reproductions.
Jim, do we have any copies of this book in our Docent library?
Yes. Yeah, Carolyn left a note on the chat. Yes, we do.
Good.
Excellent. Good to have our co-librarian or former librarian with us. The other point I made is Bob was alluding to the Nelson Atkins. I don't know if anyone read that post I put on the chat, but you may have remembered, those who have been around a while, in the American and Asian and European collections, you'll find Earl Grant's name on a lot of the labels where he was a big donor. He was on our board of trustees for years. And his wonderful sister, for instance, gave us the White Trumpet Flower by Georgia O'Keeffe in memory of her brother Earl's death. They were both very active and connected with the Nelson Atkins in Kansas City, because they were both born and raised in Kansas City before they moved out west to California. So there's hundreds of works of art in the Nelson Atkins that came from Earl Grant and his sister Inez Grant Parker. So I don't know if any of you have been there or have it on their bucket list like Bob does, but if you do, keep your eye tuned for that name, Earl Grant and Inez Grant Parker.
Okay. Heather, did you have something else, or is that an old hand? Okay. So I want to move on, if we're ready to talk about the 3-object exercise. I just want to talk about it for a couple of minutes. Thanks, Bob. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
And like I said, I will get a written directions up onto the web. But like I said, I don't want you panicking about this. I don't want you looking at it as a passing tour. What it is an exercise in flow. Most of you have not done a passing tour in the museum. We've been doing them on Zoom. And so we've been able to put the works up really kind of how the order fits with our theme best. Well, now we're going to have to do our passing tours by where the objects are in the museum, and our path is going to have to work in that way. So this is actually a simple exercise to get you to think about a theme, which we'll talk more about themes on Wednesday. But I want you to come up with a theme that would link 3 works of art, one tomb object, one Buddhist object, and one from the Magnificence of China, which is the larger room. And I want you to have an introduction, and I'm literally talking about a 5 or 6 minute total exercise. So just 1 or 2 sentence introduction stating your theme, and then moving to your first work, 1 or 2 sentences about how that theme relates to that work of art, a transition to your second work of art, and again, 1 or 2 sentences about how that work of art relates to the theme, a transition to your third work of art, 1 or 2 sentences about how that work of art relates to your theme, and then a conclusion, again, just 1 or 2 sentences, wrapping it up. So we're not going to worry about definitions. We are going to think about the fact that you wouldn't introduce a word in your transition. Like if you're transitioning from the tomb room to the Buddhist room, you're not going to use the word Buddhist in your transition, okay? Because you're not going to introduce that until you're talking in there. But you are going to transition, and then you'll do your conclusion and your theme in the end. So I already see questions. Okay, Richard?
So will you be giving us, I guess, a list that defines the various divisions of the assigned work? I mean, you want, X, one from this, one from that. We have to know.
Well, I think
very clearly what that
it's
work
pretty
is.
clear which ones are the tomb objects in the tomb room, and then the Buddhist objects, which are in the temple room, and also there was the Guanyin and the rotunda and the Wenshu in the entrance.
It's only clear
And
that's
then
in the tomb
anything-
room when you're in the tomb room. It's not clear when you're looking at the list of works that have been assigned.
Right. So you're gonna actually have to go to the museum probably. and you'll be there on Wednesday. You're gonna be in the museum on Wednesday.
So we can't actually prepare the ones in the tomb room until we actually go on Wednesday and see what's in the tomb rooms. And I don't.
Yeah,
think
well,
that's-
you're going to use, okay, so you're gonna be restricted to what we've had reports on and what reports are provided to you on the list, right?
Yeah, but the list doesn't divide the way you divided them. It does not.
Okay, I understand, Richard, but part of understanding the East Asian galleries is understanding which works are tomb works and which works are Buddhist works. So I don't really see why that's an issue. I mean, is there a work that you're particularly concerned about?
I just right now couldn't actually tell you which probably are the tomb works right off my head. And
You can research it online. Research it online. There's the 3D tour of the museum, and then you also have the gallery labels that tell you which pieces of work are on view in each room. But I think the 3D tour is a great way because you can just go in and walk around and see it.
Yeah, she's right. Absolutely. That is a great tool. In some areas of the museum, of course, we've changed things up, but in the Asian galleries, things have not changed in those areas for quite a while. And then you also have the reports, which will be over the next couple of days, are going to move from the draft to the approved. And I don't want you using works that aren't presented as reports or provided reports. Remember, we have those whole groups of reports that are provided to you, and those are all online. So those will all make it very clear what are tomb objects and what are Buddhist objects. Pat, you have a question?
Yeah, yeah, a couple. So we're limited to, right now, there's a bunch of pictures or images on the, so we're limited to whatever there's an image of, right, on our assignments, the assignment images.
Yeah, let me think about that. I think that's probably right. Because all
Okay.
those images that we provided are either something someone's giving a report on, or we have provided a report. Yes.
Okay, and I agree with Richard. Okay, so it's, I mean, I can do this exercise and I can figure it out with the app, blah, blah. But at some point, you'll be talking about what we need for the, or at some point soon, are you going to post what's required for the passing tours in
Passing
terms of the
tour.
category?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, we will
And
do
and at
that.
some point, you're going to separate out what's which category, like the
Certain-
last,
Yes, but but
but we
that
don't need
hasn't-
it for this exercise.
Yeah, for this exercise, it's not necessary. And I really honestly don't want you thinking of this as a passing tour. I know when we did this exercise in the Renaissance Baroque and which I'm not sure how many of you were in that class, and a lot of people like really wanted to make it into a passing tour where they did 5 minutes on each object and all of that. And I don't want you to go there. This is not that. Okay.
No, it's just,
yeah.
you know, obviously it's nice if you can remember it and use whatever you did for the
Sure, of
passing
course.
tour. But yeah,
And-
so total 5 minutes, no
Yeah,
problem.
5 to 6 minutes, really. And I mean, I think you can assume that, yes, on the passing tour, you're going to have a tomb object, a Buddhist object, and something. You're going to have more requirements than that, but you can assume that is going to be the case too.
Okay, thanks.
You're Sonia?
Yes, I didn't get the third requirement. I got the tomb, I got the Buddhist. What was the third?
The Magnificence of China, which is that large room where the 8 immortals are and where your painting is, and the objects in that room, the Maping base, in, you know, the things in there.
And when is this exercise going to be?
So for their group 1A, which will be your group, is going to be the 29th. Oh, wait a minute. No, sorry. I'm looking at the wrong. Will be October 20th. And for the freshmen, it's going to be October 27th. Oh, wow. I'm getting rain and thunder. I don't know if anybody else is. I just had a burst of thunder there.
I'm sorry, when were the freshmen?
October 27th. So, so you have
So
some time.
We'll be in there. There's time. It's not like we have to do it
Yeah.
this Wednesday. So we
No,
can,
absolutely not. No. I'm
But
just
we'll
giving
be
you
hearing-
information.
we'll be hearing other freshmen's reports. And so that helps us
That's
to pick out.
That's
Okay,
right.
so
And
it's
we're-
5 minutes on the 27th.
Yes, and we're only covering China. We're not, you know, we're pretty much finished with the China. Let me just check the syllabus here. So, yes, so we had today on China, and then Wednesday will be reports on China, then no class on Monday. And starting on the 18th, which is when? Is that 2 weeks from today? Then we're going to start on Korea. So we're pretty much we're reaching the end of China. So this 3 object exercise is only objects in the Chinese collection.
So Michelle, I'm missing something. Are we?
That's okay.
Are we picking one of each object in the tomb, Buddhist or Magnificence? Or we can pick
Yes.
whatever we want within
Yes.
each gallery, and then
Yes.
we go through that intro, describe it in 1 or 2 sentences, then transition, and then so we just pick out our own.
Well, yes, but we're going to, and for the freshmen, I don't want you to start thinking about this until after you do your reports on Wednesday, okay? Because also on Wednesday, we're going to talk about themes. And theme is, and the other students know what a theme is, so they can start thinking about this, and they're going a week before you anyway. So, so we're going to have a theme that ties the 3 works together. So if say you pick, I'm just pulling out of thin air, okay? Symbolism. So you have a theme that's wrapped around symbolism. You want to pick 3 works that you can talk about the symbolism, and that it's the theme that's going to link the 3 works together and help you come up with your transitions and help you with your introduction and conclusion.
Thank you.
So,
That gives me a lot more clarity. Thank you.
okay. Yeah. Sandra.
Well, I just want she said so that we can choose whatever we want. So I just wanted to make sure that Alan understood from the assignment and
From the assignments, yes, from the, yes,
provided report list.
yes.
So it's not anything in those. Groups.
Yeah, don't pick
Okay,
something that hasn't been talked about, yeah.
And my second thing, Michelle, where are you located where you're having rain?
Chula Vista, South Bay,
Okay, thanks.
yeah.
This is-
So maybe coming to you soon, I don't know.
This is a stupid question, and obviously everybody else, sorry, what's magnificence of China? Is that big room?
That's what we call that big room.
Okay,
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, and those exhibits do have changed a lot more over time. The tomb room and the Buddhist room, they've been, pretty much fixed for a number of years. Yes, Catherine.
Okay, I'm still not clear on I'm pretty clear on it, but are you gonna write down what we have to do?
Yes.
Oh, you will write
I'm going
that
to write
down?
it down and I'm going to put it up on the website and I'll send you an email. I'll send out a group
Awesome.
email. Yeah.
Okay, all
I
right,
just-
thanks
yeah.
so much.
And you're a freshman, so don't even worry about this until you get.
I
through
know,
your
I'm so
report on
worried because this
Wednesday.
is the third thing I have to do. Okay,
Yeah.
am I still good not to worry about the written report? Because I'm having enough anxiety over the oral.
Oh, yeah. No, your written report isn't until, when is your written report? Your group 2B is not
November
until
18th.
November, yeah.
18th.
Well, your
Thank you,
oral
Becky.
is November 10th and your written report is due November 8th. So you have plenty of time.
Oh, November 8th.
Okay, right, I'm gonna practice with, I hope I'm not taking up too much time, but I'm really
No,
worried about it. I'm gonna practice with my mentor after this, Karen.
Okay, good.
Do you have, I'm getting off the subject, but do you have an order that we're gonna present in?
No, because what I'm going to have to do is divide you in half again and figure out who's going to go in the first half and who's going to go in the second half. And we're going to have to swap like we did
So it'll
last
probably be 2 of us, in 2 to 3 in each
2
group?
to 3. So I'll work on that too. I'll get that out. Do you have a concern about the order or
I'd like to go
you're
first.
just trying to plan?
No, I want to go first because that
You wanna go
way I won't be nervous. I can't, it's hard, I have a hard time listening when I'm nervous for some reason.
everybody wants to go first, so.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
yeah,
point
that's
off.
typical. Everybody usually wants to go first. Oops, I'm sorry, my cat's playing with the keys. Everybody wants to go first unless they're that one person who wants to go last. And there's always somebody that, yeah, okay, there's always somebody who wants to go last. But I know you're nervous. You've never done this before. Like I said, though, it's not like your career as a docent depends on you being perfect on your first oral report. Okay, this is all new to you. We know that. So, just take it as this is my first one and I'm going to learn from this experience. Okay. We're not going to eat you alive. I promise. So anything else? Any questions regarding anything right now? Yes, Richard.
It's me again.
Yes. Oh, I can't see you. I just see your hand
Well,
waving.
okay, here you can see me. You know what I look like.
Yeah.
Let me get rid of that. All right. So, simple question. The tomb room, it has Buddhist images in it, correct?
Not really.
Oh, not really.
No, you have it. The only Buddhist is the
Campbell.
When you say Buddhist, you mean
as you
actually
enter
Buddha
the
himself. You
entire
mean Buddha
gallery.
himself. Is that what you mean when you say Buddhist image? You mean Buddha himself?
Buddha or Bodhisattva or any of those rooms, in any of those objects that are in the temple room.
Oh, see, I'm confusing the temple room and the tomb room.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The tomb room is the first room that you enter, but there's also there's a Buddhist Bodhisattva in the rotunda that Sina talked about. And then there is the Wenshu lion one right there in the entrance to the entire exhibit.
So when we first enter into beyond what Sandra and when we enter beyond that, that's the tomb room,
Yes.
the darker space, and then beyond that is the what room?
Is the temple room.
The temple room. All
We
right.
call it that. I think it's the temple room.
And it's in
yeah.
the temple room that's chock full of Buddhist images.
Right.
All right. And the tomb room is not chock full of Buddhist, but it has
No, it's-
Buddhist related things, doesn't it?
No, it has all those, the bronze and the jade and the camels and all of that was buried in the tombs.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
clarified.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you
based
need to
on the-
understand that or you're gonna have
No, no,
trouble.
I mean,
with it before
I did not really separate that in my head. It hasn't
Okay.
really been
Yeah.
separated
Cal,
clearly.
I just wanted to ask, it doesn't have to go in any order. It could be like tomb, magnificent room, and Buddhist, or
No, it's you're gonna have to have a flow. So you're
Yeah.
probably gonna want to start at one end or the other. I don't
you
care
can't
what
backtrack.
order you go
Pitch
in,
in.
but it's gotta be a flow. If you were giving a tour, you don't want to circle back
Yeah.
your path. So you want to go from, if you're doing a tour of 9 objects, you're going to want to move from one to the other, to the other, to the other, and not backtrack. So you're
Doesn't
only
have to be
doing
a
3
straight
objects,
angle.
3
It
steps.
doesn't have to be a
Whichever-
straight line. You can angle it, but you can't
Yeah.
backtrack. That's the important thing.
Right. So you can either, if you can start with a Buddhist object in the rotunda and then do a tomb object and then move through the temple room into the magnificence of China, that would make sense. Or you could even start with the magnificence of China, move into the temple room and then out to the tomb room. Or you can, however you want, as long as it makes sense and you want it to make sense with your theme. The lesson here is you can't always do a tour in the perfect order that you might think. You might think, oh, I want to do everything chronologically. Well, that almost never works in the museum. Almost never, because the works aren't necessarily hung that way. And you have to go by the path. Think if you were doing a highlights tour, which I know the seniors are probably getting anxious about, we need to talk about soon. They're not going to be able to do any kind of chronological tour, or even, they're going to have to start either on the first floor or the second floor of the museum and hit most of the galleries. And they're going to have to figure out with their theme and the path through the museum, how is that going to work? So you often, your theme and your path need to make sense. Okay. So this is actually fairly simple because we're only talking 3 objects and we have kind of 3 distinct areas. And you could probably make anything make sense. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Richard, do you still have more or is your hand just still waving?
No, I forgot to put my hand down. I'll do that.
Okay. Okay.
Can I contribute a little bit to the
Yes.
discussion of the galleries without making your heads explode? One of the things we would like all of you trainees to learn is the gallery numbers. And so we're pretty easy in East Asia because there's only 2 gallery numbers. Gallery 7 is the tomb room and the Buddhist temple room. Everybody got that? Gallery 8 is the Korean corridor, the magnificence of China, and the Japan area. That's all gallery 8, okay? So you should imprint that on your mind so you'll have that when you graduate and become a docent. Because I have to say, one thing I'm very disappointed with all of our docents on is nobody seems to know the gallery numbers. I even had one of our docent council meeting, I actually put up a big map and we played pin the number on the gallery, like pin the tail on the donkey. And I had all these little Post-it notes with the numbers and hardly anyone got the galleries right. I mean, that was the whole museum. So we kind of want to drill on that, but it gets more complicated as we get into, more spread out areas. But this one's easy because there's just 2.
What was the last part of the gallery 8 after Magnificence of China?
Japan, which we haven't even gone into yet, I don't think, unless some of you just wandered in there. That's where that little shrine, little kind of temple shrine carved out of wood is. I don't know if you've seen that or not. So anyway, just a little bit of history, if you don't mind. I don't want to take your time if you've got more to do, Michelle, but
No, we're.
I don't know, some of you probably already have heard this, but the museum wasn't built all at one time. The old building, which is the rotunda, was, and if you think about the gift shop and the American galleries, those were all part of the original 1926 building. But when they expanded it in 1966, yeah, that's a good point, Pat. If you read your chat, she'll have that. In 1966, they made a major expansion and what we call the West Wing, and that includes the library, the Panama 66 courtyard, the auditorium, but it also includes the modern contemporary galleries, and it includes the Asian area. And so that whole corridor of Korea, and then what I just told you is Gallery 8, that was all added on. It wasn't part of the original building. And if you go in and to what Michelle's been telling you, we call now the Magnificence of China room. Have any of you ever looked up and noticed there's like windows all the way around up above? That's called a clear story, architecturally speaking. And that's there because that was originally an exterior courtyard. There was no roof over it when the museum was built, when the West Wing was built in 1966. In fact, I'll dig up a photo of it and share it with you maybe next Monday, if anyone cares. A photo of it when it was still open air. So it had some planters with some overgrown bonsai trees in it, and it had a couple, the rams, you know, the 2 stone rams that are right at the beginning of the Korean corridor. Those were out in the outdoors. Of course, when rain fell on them, it didn't help their conservation any, which is probably one of the reasons they decided to cover it all over. So in 1974, they decided to increase their, they didn't have much Asian outdoor sculpture. So they decided, well, why don't we just put a roof over it and then we can make more galleries inside the museum rather than wasting this kind of outside space. So they took out the glass windows that had been along the edge where the Korean works are. They put a roof over it with that clear story and they enclosed it all. And it was opened as the new Asian galleries in 1975. So I just want to give you that little bit of background because I think it helps you appreciate the development of the museum and how the Asian collection has grown over time. And just as a little gee whiz factor, when it was dedicated in 1975, we had a guest appear who cut the ribbon for it, and it was First Lady Betty Ford. And she came out and we have all these photos and they had a grand, you know, ball and a banquet and all this stuff. And we have these pictures of her cutting the ribbon. So they made a big hoopla over it. And so that's kind of the history of that whole Asian court. All right, well, that's all I wanted to give you.
Okay. Carolyn, you have something for us.
Thank you.
Adding to Jim's, I just wanted to mention when we were training, it was still that pebbly surface in that, even though it was indoors, it was not the teak wood floors that came in about 10 years ago or whatever that was.
Yeah.
So we were training on those hard floors. It was really something different.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, that, you know, the concrete where they pressed pebbles into it, that's what the floors were because they were outdoor floors. And there were drains still from the rainwater. And we had a really bad storm one year and the drains all backed up and water started coming out in reverse, coming up into the gallery like a geyser. I mean, some of it shot up 3 feet. And so, yeah, we had real risks to the artwork. So they had to eventually go in and fill all this with concrete and close them off. And that beautiful teakwood floor was done in a big remodel that was sponsored really, I don't know if any of you have heard of the name, but Sonia Ree Quintanilla was the curator of Asian art at the time. And she really masterminded that whole remodel of that Asian court. And I hope you all agree I think it's stunning.
Yeah, it really is.
Beautiful, beautiful arrangement. Anyway, a little bit of history for you.
Yeah. Okay, is anybody else? And I will send that link that Pat's talking about. I think a lot of you are familiar with it, with the 3D tour of the galleries. But I will send a link. It's on the museum website, not on the Docent Resources website.
It's not on the museum website, it's just on the app unless you're a member. But I just tried signing in and I couldn't figure out how to do it as a member. It says they suspended it as of July 2021 on the website as opposed to the app. Yeah, if you go in, you'll get an error message. But then it says if you're a member, which I think we all are, you can get in free. But if somebody can tell me how to do that, let me know because I couldn't figure it out.
Oh, okay. Gosh. Interesting. I wonder what, I guess, okay. I'm not in charge of that. I have no idea why that is. Okay, I'll see what I can.
It's still on the phone app of it, the virtual
Okay.
tour.
Okay.
Yeah, I will inquire. I don't know what that is all about. Because they launched that new 360-degree thing right around the time of Art Alive. Is that still available or not?
It's the one that's not available anymore as of
okay.
July, and it's the one that's on the actual website. And it says for $10 you can get on unless you're a member. But I couldn't figure out how to get on as a member. It's still on the app if you want to look at a little puny bitty screen.
Gotcha.
Okay. Or if you have, maybe not. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's now that the museum is open. I guess maybe they decided to do that. I don't know.
I don't know. It's very expensive to do it. They have to have special photography come in and do the 360-degree scan. Maybe they decided they needed to pay for it. I don't know. I'll ask about it. I'll let you all know, but certainly it's on the app.
Yeah. Okay. So any last minute questions, and then we can head out just a little bit early.
Yeah, it's Richard. I just wanted to see if Dr. Grebel could repeat. I missed it. I'm sorry about those galleries for the magnificence of China Room and what he had told us. I didn't get those.
Oh, the whole thing, you mean the numbers or what?
Yeah, just the gallery numbers.
Oh, yeah. Well, Gallery 7 is the one that is the tomb room and the Buddhist temple room.
Okay.
And then if you turn left and go down that little corridor where the Korean works are, that's where you're entering Gallery 8. So from there on, everything is Gallery 8. The magnificence of China, the Japanese side of that, we call that thing in the middle of the deck because it's raised up. And there's that wall on it where the porcelain pieces are all kind of on little shelves. That's called the deck. And it has a reverse side of it on the other side, which is also in Gallery 8, but it's the Japanese side of it. And that's where that little shrine, carved wood shrine is. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. It'll make more sense when you're actually in the space and you walk around and look at it, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. Well, we will see you on Wednesday. Same routine, drop off your stuff downstairs and come up to the rotunda, and see you then. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.